have a wonderful strategy. They have something unique, they have something which is competitive, and they do it at the lowest cost and the highest return with people who are very much in touch with the sector. And they do it with great values. Now, these are the same things whether you're an investor in private equity or whether you're a long-owning equity investor in PLCs. I mean, so there's business in the end is business. These are just different forms of it.
Yes, no, excellent. And then related to that, you know, talk about a great company, and you built BP into being a great company. What about the leadership qualities? Because, you know, in the interviews, we've interviewed now over 150 CEOs, and you struck me as somebody who was a very good example of a corporate ambassador in terms of having, you had a vision for the industry, you were able to sort of broker geopolitical large-scale M&A deals, and you were able to sort of, you know, drive a lot of the consolidation in industry. You know, what are some of those sort of leadership qualities that you think are important to work in a sort of global business like you've done?
I think my first boss, when I started working in BP, said something which always stayed with me. He said, you know, you can't find any oil in London, and therefore you had to go out to do business. Now, that's not completely true, of course, because in the end, you know, London was centre of finance, centre of activity with the board and things like that. But actually, an awful lot of that is true. That a company like BP that relies on having a license to operate in countries that have natural resources, that give you the privilege of participating in that and making a lot of money, you have to be there, and you have to be the ambassador of the brand, of the people, of the technology, of the company as a whole, and making sure that you're getting the business, that you maintain the right relationships with everybody, so that you can survive and prosper through all sorts of different times.
Okay. And in terms of, do you see sort of certain personal qualities that will be important for CEOs going forward in a more, you know, global, connected ecosystem markets? Do you see any?
Well, I suppose every generation of CEOs look at the next one and say, that's a very difficult job you've got, and it's different from the one that I had. I think there are a lot of demands on CEOs. I think the demands change nature every year, depending on the fashion or the stresses of the world. I do think that CEOs have to, on the one hand, have a very strong suit of some sort, on the other hand, be very broad. They really need to see how they're connected to the world and how every part of their firm is connected to the other parts of the firm. I think they need to have a good set of experience about what not to do as well as what to do. I would think that maybe business very often is characterized by people working to exhaustion. Indeed, I very often work very hard. But when I reflect on it, again, great advice, great mentoring, is to remember when not to do something, when actually to step back and let something develop or let other people do what they should be doing. CEOs need a very acute sense of timing and where to, you know, play with the loud pedal on and the soft pedal on. That's very important.
And when to gently apply the brakes at times.
And when to gently apply the brakes and don't slam them on where you shouldn't.
Okay. And then related to that, John, your advice for, you know, aspiring CEOs looking to lead in the next 5-10 years? They're probably in their early to mid-careers?
I think the thing I would say to them is, of course, make sure you're prepared, get lots of experience, and don't stop listening. So experience, please don't stop listening, and think very carefully about this one point, is that nobody leaves early enough. And try and remember that as you go through your tenure. I forgot it. I think a lot of people forget it. But it's remembering when to bow off the stage is more important than when to go on the stage.
Right. And then, you know, when you were working at BP and running the business, how did you manage to sort of stay sort of rested and grounded? You know, how did you Because it must be a lot of pressure, you know. In the,
No, I tended to sleep very well, and looked after myself. I didn't find it something I couldn't handle.
Yeah.
I think it got a bit wearing towards the end. I think the last couple of years, I think I found it a little bit more wearing than I did with the first 10.
Yeah.
But I think it's a mindset. Things are so exciting. It's great, and when you can see things through the eyes of others, which is very important, then that keeps you going.
Yeah.
And it's quite exciting. I was always very careful as well to take plenty of time off, long stretches on vacation, and to make sure that I didn't worry about being out of touch for periods of the year.
Okay. And when you're thinking about your career now, and you look back, this is the BP time, of course, is there one or two sort of magic moments that stick in your mind of significance, or when you were able to make an impact?
Well, I suppose the one which really does stick in my mind is the day we announced the merger with Amico. It was the largest single industrial transaction the world had ever seen, I believe at the time. It was such a surprise for everybody, and it was the start. It was the break point which made the big difference to BP. And I remember that day vividly. I remember a hot day and announcing it in the Honourable Artillery Company's headquarters, where the lights kept fusing. There were so many cameramen. It was the most extraordinary event. And I think the other thing I remember is the speech I gave at Stanford, and all the build-up to that 10 years ago, over 10 years ago now, which set the tone on climate change and worrying about what oil companies were going to do for the future. And these two things, of course, I remember the big thing was the great build-up with the team of great people. I mean, really extraordinary people. Working on all dimensions of these great challenges. And it was a privilege to lead them.
I think that the Stanford moment, I think, was a particular very fundamental moment. I think there's been a few that have really tipped the sustainability movement forward.
I think it certainly made a very big change. I mean, it broke the mold. You know, if we hadn't done it, I'm sure someone else would have done it. But it wasn't obvious when we did it. There was certainly a divided opinion internally, and there was definitely a divided opinion externally. I mean, most people thought we were crazy, that actually we were almost admitting that cigarettes give you lung cancer. And I leave people to interpret that in the right way.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of advice, there was some advice that you wish you'd had in your own career. You know, besides giving advice to others, is there?
Well, I suppose I got a lot of good advice. I listened to some of it, not all of it. I wish I'd listened to all of it. I think I wish I had almost a big brother who would actually push me to admit that I hadn't listened.
Right.
And I missed that. I think I was very privileged. I had a good mentor or two. I had great predecessors. And of course, for a good chunk of my career, I had a great partner in Rodney Chase. We were two very different peas in one pod, and that worked out very well.
Yeah, it was a formidable partnership, I think.
It was a formidable partnership.
Yes. And then finally, John, we talked to the CEOs about the secrets of being a CEO. Are there anything that really you think are really important in terms of personal leadership, or other points about the secret to being a great CEO?
Well, don't lose the plot. It's the first thing. Just remember what you're doing. Remember what you're not meant to be doing as well. Really do. That's the big one. And remember who you are. Remember who you are. It's very difficult nowadays to separate private life with public life, but try and do that as much as possible. And my final and fourth point is, remember when to leave.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much, John.
Pleasure.
Pleasure as ever.